It's been an exciting first year as a congressman. We've heard about all kinds of things on the Endangered Species Act in this committee. We've heard about wolves being released into Yellowstone and overpopulating and still not being delisted. We've heard the same thing with grizzly bears. Recently had a major court decision come down in favor of lobstermen who hadn't had a right whale fishing line incident within the last 24 years, but were still required to restrict their practices further because of a claim of Chevron deference by an agency that wanted them to possibly go out of business. I live in the Central Valley. I represent Modesto down through Fresno, where we grow a lot of almonds. We have a lot of irrigated farmland coming out of the Sierra Nevada. A lot of those areas that are irrigated in my district are supplied with water out of the Delta. And we've seen in the last 20, 30 years, an incredibly unsuccessful effort to save the Delta smelt. It's dead. It's been dead for a few years. Find me one if you can. To save the salmon, their numbers are low. They're very low. We're flushing 70 to 90 million acre feet of water a year out into the ocean from our water projects in California. We've devastated our groundwater. It's fallen dramatically. It's actually caused us infrastructure problems with the subsidence related. It's devastated rural communities, farm families. It's devastated farm workers. And again, provided no benefits. Are you, Administrator Coit or Director Williams, are you accountable to deliver results, or are you simply charged to disperse of our resources as you will without accountability for results? That's a question.
Chairman Bentz and Congressman Duarte, as a public servant, I believe that for the Fish and Wildlife Service, the buck does stop with me, and I am accountable. But at the same time, to measure the success of endangered species purely on delisting is, I don't think is fully accurate with the purposes for which the act was.
Great. I'll move on to Ms. Coit because I've got a lot more I'd like to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with what Director Williams said. I do care deeply about the persistence of the lobster industry and working closely with them. And yes, we're responsible to uphold the law, implement the law, and to ensure that we have our results when it comes to these species that have a multitude of challenges and are on the brink of extinction often by the time they're listed.
Thank you. So here's the last time the Endangered Species Act was reauthorized right here. And that was about, 40 million acres or 30 million acres of critical habitat. Since it failed to be reauthorized, then expired, we've got 250 million acres of critical habitat. Now, a good chunk of that, I know, is the 10% of California's land area that is designated to fairy shrimp critical habitat, fairy shrimp and vernal pool critical habitat. Now, when we talk about fairy shrimp, we're talking about sea monkeys, literally, back in the comic books, at least when I was a kid. These have survived unevolved since 300 million years ago when the entire surface land area of the globe was one continent, Pangaea. I don't believe that we could absent the earth of fairy shrimp species if we tried, but nonetheless in California, 10% of the land area of California, including great swaths of private farmland, are designated fairy shrimp critical habitat. Now, Fish and Wildlife says, what is critical habitat? This is a document I can provide. Critical habitat is the specific areas within geographic areas occupied by the species that can contain physical or biological features. Critical habitat going forward, designations affect only federal agency actions or federally funded or permitted activities. Critical habitat designations do not affect activities by private landowners if there is no federal nexus, that is, no federal funding or authorization. Is that true today? Are private landowners burdened with critical habitat designations today?
Chairman Bentz and Congressman Duarte, in fact, it is true that the provisions of Section 7 for critical habitat apply to the nexus of federal land ownership, or if there's any funding or grant making through that federal agency.
Thank you.